Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Danny Plugger. I'm the Executive Director of Virginians for High-Speed Rail. Thanks to everybody for joining us today. We have a great program, Unlocking the Northeast Corridor, with Jim Short, Amtrak's Acting Senior Vice President of Capital Delivery. I want to thank Jim, as well as all of you, for joining us for this afternoon's virtual town hall. We are very excited about today's program and our entire series. The purpose of our virtual town hall series is to give Virginians and our supporters an opportunity to hear from and engage with the leading transportation decision makers and thinkers in the room today. This town hall series is made possible at no cost to participants through the generosity of our sponsors, WSP, iCamera, and the FACE companies. Thank you for your support. One bit of housekeeping. Please send your questions via the chat box at any point, and I'll address them to our speaker at the appropriate time. And know that this program will also be posted on YouTube following the completion of today's program. Now, Virginia has greatly benefited both from our proximity to the Northeast Corridor and our tremendous partnership with Amtrak. Since 2009, when we began our state-sponsored passenger rail program and started extending additional Northeast regionals into the Commonwealth, we've seen our passenger rail ridership grow over 151%. From not only breaking 1 million passengers, but now on pace to break 2.5 million passengers this fiscal year. And over 40% of every trip taken on one of our state-supported Amtrak Virginia regional trains begins or ends at stations along the Northeast Corridor. What happens along the NEC plays a critical role in the success of our passenger rail service and our entire passenger rail program. So to figure out how unlocking the Northeast Corridor impacts Virginia and the entire East Coast through all the great projects currently underway along the corridor is Jim Short. Jim is Acting Senior Vice President of Amtrak's Capital Delivery Department, a department of nearly 800 employees delivering more than $4 billion in capital project work through FY 2025. Jim is a proven and seasoned leader in the engineering and construction business with more than 45 years experience in project management, commercial management, and project controls. His experience ranges from executive leadership in industry-leading firms to project assignments in the U.S. and abroad. Industries include high-speed rail, mass transit, power and mining and metals, U.S. government projects such as chemical demilitarization, and the nuclear weapons complex. So Jim, kicking it over to you.
Thank you very much, Danny, and thanks everyone for joining here today. Great to be with you to share what we're doing on the Northeast Corridor and how that benefits Northern Virginia, which I'm also a resident, and the rest of the Commonwealth. So again, thanks for having me, and I've got some slides here. I'll try not to bore you, but just to give you an update on, first, a kind of a big Amtrak business update at the overall Amtrak level, because we are a company of about 23,000 employees. Between our frontline workers that run the trains every day, the mechanical folks that keep the trains running safely every day, to our management staff within capital delivery. Danny mentioned about 800 management folks here in capital delivery, and out of about a total of 4,000 management employees across Amtrak. I'll talk some about our department, what that looks like, and the portfolio. Some of you might find that interesting, and how did we organize and set this department up to be ready to execute this size of a portfolio. I'm going to walk through the Northeast Corridor from south to north with the focus on the projects that we're executing along the way, and I'll also talk about our fleet and facilities program, wrapping up with a discussion about NextGen Acela, which is going to be launching next week. Then we'll have Q&A, as Danny also mentioned. So let's get started. First with a business update. We're having an amazing year as a company. Record ridership. We're just way over any numbers we've ever seen before, even pre-pandemic. Our operating revenue is beating plan. It's at the highest levels ever in the company. This year, the company will invest $6.8 billion in capital investments. About $4 billion of that is here in capital delivery, as Danny mentioned, and I'll talk about some of those projects. The launching of our NextGen Acela train sets has been a very long journey to get to. a great partnership with the Federal Railroad Administration and our manufacturer, Alstom, to get those trains ready, commissioned, and going into revenue service next week. I got a slide on that near the end. We have launched 2 new services in our network this year that were not on the Northeast Corridor. That was the new Borealis up in the Midwest and the Mardi Gras service from Mobile, Alabama to New Orleans. That was last week. I was there for that launch, but a lot of excitement along that corridor. But it's all part of what we're trying to do is to expand our service to take more people to more places by train. And 120 plus new accessible stations, that's a whole nother program within the company to make our stations across the entire network to be ADA compliant. So really, it's just an amazing year for Amtrak. So I'm going to dive in now to capital delivery. So capital delivery was formed as a department in January of 2022. Some of you may be aware of the bipartisan infrastructure law, also known as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA, that provided a tremendous amount of funding for infrastructure investment in the United States. Amtrak got about 22 billion of that as a direct recipient, and then there was another 40 billion or so that was available through federal state partnership grants. And so it really provided a tremendous amount of funding that Amtrak has never enjoyed before to fix our infrastructure assets. And I'll be talking about some of those as I go forward in the rest of the slides. But in order to manage that spend and manage it well, Laura Mason was brought here to Amtrak in the middle of 2021, and she is the executive vice president of this department. I'm in an acting role while she's on leave. She'll be back on September 22nd. But she stood this department up with a mission, as stated here on the screen, and that is to deliver these capital projects, to execute them safely, on budget, on schedule, and to deliver them with high quality. It doesn't do any good to deliver a project that the railroad can't use. So it's really a focus of ours is to make sure that the assets that we're providing, whether it's a tunnel or it's a bridge, it's upgraded catenary system or new fleet, whatever it is absolutely ready to be used by the operating portion of the railroad. So we are the internal design builder for the company. I'll talk more about our projects in a moment, but what we are trying to do is to close that gap between our current state of the infrastructure and our trains and our vision for future operations. I know this is a busy picture, but I'll spend a minute on it. This is the Northeast Corridor, and that's the whole purpose of this conversation today. So every dot on that line is a project that we are executing. We have 220 projects in our portfolio, active projects. They range from a few $1 million to a $6 billion program south of Baltimore. The dots in the colors represent the phase of the project that they're in. The gray dots are still in conceptual planning. The brown dots are in a procurement phase, which means we are going out for contract and getting ready to start engineering or construction. The blue dots are in advanced design and pre-construction activities, and the green are in major construction or manufacturing. You can see several green dots on there, and there's going to be more. We just announced this week we've awarded 3 design build contracts for our level 1 mechanical facilities. When you buy new fleet, you have to have new facilities to maintain those new fleet. So that was just announced this week. So everything from tunnels to bridges to major stations, rail yard upgrades I mentioned, the new train sets, just all kinds of stuff along the railroad in terms of substation replacement, catenary systems, track work, everything is required to run the railroad. Is all of this is within the capital delivery portfolio. Wrong button. Again, a lot on this slide, but some of you will find this interesting, I hope, to understand how would you go about standing up an organization to manage the level of spend that has never been seen before in Amtrak. The capital spend in the company prior to FY 2019 was about $1 billion a year. And you could see by the numbers, we're like 6 times that level now. So when it came to thinking about how do we stand this up, this was really Laura's vision when she stood this department up in January of 2022. And it makes a lot of sense if you think about it. We're essentially a design build company inside of an operating company. So we use the shared services from the operating company, like human resources and procurement and finance, law. Those other departments are not within capital delivery. We wanted to leverage those existing departments in Amtrak. They already had existing processes, procedures, and trained people to do that, and it would have been terribly inefficient to try to replicate those functions within capital delivery. So Laura focused this on, let's start on the right-hand side first. What are we trying to do? We need to deliver projects, and that is in our delivery verticals. These folks deliver those 200 plus projects that I mentioned, and it's in 2 primary verticals. One is the infrastructure project delivery. These folks are the ones doing the bridges, the tunnels, the capital renewal program, the B&P or Frederick Douglass Tunnel program. That's all under infrastructure. Then there's the fleet and facilities side. This is the fleet acquisition of the NextGen Acela trains, the Aero train sets, the long distance fleet, and then also the maintenance facilities that I mentioned previously. In the middle here is a bit of a mix between mega program development and the major stations. So capital delivery doesn't maintain all of the stations in the network across the entire United States. We have the construction responsibility, engineering and construction on the 5 what we call iconic stations: Chicago, New York Penn, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington. Those stations are within the capital delivery organization. All other Amtrak stations outside of that are with another department in Amtrak. So this department here, the orange one in the middle, they manage the active construction projects on those 5 iconic stations, but they're also leading what we call the mega program development, like the overall master plan for Washington Union Station, the Gateway program, which is a collection of major programs and development activities up in the New York, New Jersey area, and CHIP, which is the Chicago Hub Improvement Program. Over here on the left are what we call our centers of excellence and project services. We wanted to be able to set up an organization with procedures and processes to be able to execute all of these projects the same way. The more standardization that you have, the more efficient you'll be, and the better chance of a successful outcome in terms of completing these projects on time and on budget. So starting from the left is engineering services. This is the technical authority of the railroad. The program development project services piece is the how to build. That's the real procedures, commercial management, project controls, our NEPA team with the environmental historical experts. Those are in that central functions organization. And then commissioning and corridor optimization is really around resource and outage planning. You realize that we're on an operating railroad, and when it comes to building these new infrastructure projects, we've got to take outages. And so there's got to be this balance between impacting our revenue and our ridership while still being able to deliver upgraded assets to the operating railroad. So all that coordination work and commissioning work is done within this organization. I hope you find that useful. Laura put a lot of thought into setting this up, and the organizational structure remains relatively unchanged from when it was established in early 2022. So moving on to our projects. So first I want to talk about capital renewal This is the organization. They spend about $800 million a year on major capital improvements for the railroad. They're organized by portfolio. There's the system portfolio, which is really a system-wide portfolio that manages our track laying system, our undercutters, high-speed rail surfacing, turnouts, rail replacement throughout the Northeast Corridor. The New York division, they execute projects in that division, such as the Ham interlocking. You see IL, that's the interlocking projects, turnouts and signals. Some projects that you'll also see mixed in here within the capital renewal portfolio is frequency converters, like at Sunnyside Yard. Up in New England, the Empire division we got projects to install catenary foundations and new poles, catenary wire, install turnouts and signals at the interlocks. And then Mid-Atlantic, a key project there for us this year is the transformer replacement at the Conestoga Yard. So that's a snapshot of the capital renewal portfolio. Moving to individual projects, again, starting from south to north, this one was just opened August 5th, 2025, the Track 22 service. Really exciting project. It took us longer than we wanted to get there. We had some challenges, but we've overcome those, and it has opened for revenue service. It's utilized by Amtrak and VRE. We renovated a storage track. We put in new tracks, rebuilt the platform, made sure we had the historic columns were rehabilitated, and we followed all of our NEPA requirements there in terms of historic preservation. And this is fully accessible, new elevator, escalator, and stairs connected to the existing station. Not a large project within our portfolio. It's $57 million was the total cost, but we're very proud that we finally got this one over the line.
Yeah, and it's quite beautiful. Encourage folks to go check it out.
Great, thanks for that. It's really well done. The Baltimore and Potomac BNP tunnel replacement program, you may have heard about this one. This is the largest program in our portfolio. This is the new tunnels that will come into the south end of Baltimore Penn Station. The existing BNP tunnel is 150 years old, and it has some challenges, and not the least of which is some very sharp curves. And those sharp curves cause us to slow down our trains to 30 miles an hour to come into the south end of Baltimore. And so this project is a $6 billion program scheduled to complete in 2035. It's going to provide 2 new electrified tunnel tubes and rail systems for passenger trains. The current scope is to essentially straighten out those tunnels by making a much wider sweeping curve coming into the south end of Baltimore, where we'll be able to maintain 100-mile-per-hour operations coming into the south end of Baltimore, reducing trip times and giving us a new tunnel infrastructure package versus this 150-year-old tunnel coming into the south end of Baltimore. The project is well underway. We have early works going on out there with utility relocations, temporary water lines. The geotech work is underway. There is an FRA study going on right now to look at cost optimization opportunities. Can we get the cost down, yet still accomplish the mission of the project? Just a few of the pictures here. This hole right here is called a siphon. There's actually 2 of these, one on each side of the Northeast Corridor. That hole's about 60 feet deep, and you'd have to go down that far in order to put new 120-inch stormwater lines underneath the Northeast Corridor, the active track. So that work is all going on. It's great to be out there and see the construction happening. As a construction guy, that's what I like to do. Moving farther north is the Gray 30th Street Station in Philadelphia. It's a beautiful station. If you've been there before, you can see the picture on the lower right is the main concourse, the main hall. But we got a project there. It's $763 million is the budget. We're scheduled to wrap that up in 2027. Complete modernization of the entire facility, the station, the back of house, customer-facing facilities, the amenities, all going to get a tremendous amount of a facelift there. Really want to improve the customer experience, station operations, retail opportunities. Restoration is underway, again, preserving the historic elements. I'm going there in a couple of weeks to do another walkthrough of the site because we're also renovating our corporate office space in the north and south towers of 30th Street. That's all part of the scope of this project. Portal North Bridge. Portal North Bridge is actually a project that the primary sponsor is New Jersey Transit, NJ Transit, but we are a funding partner and a participant in the project. We provide quite a few services to this project, including railway protective services because it's near the active alignment, electric traction support to give them outages when they need it to work the project, and we are a funding partner. So we provide this project hundreds of millions of dollars in funding. The total budget for the program is $2.2 billion. Scheduled completion is 2027. The idea here is to replace this century-old movable bridge with a modern fixed level, high-level fixed span bridge so you don't get the opening over the navigable waterways. Really improve service through the area because you don't have to open the bridge and stop traffic in order to let a boat go by. The third and final arch was installed in late February. It was floated in. There's some cool YouTube videos out there on the construction of that where they floated each of the three arches in from New York and then position them in place and let them settle right down onto the new piers. Really cool to watch those videos on how that works. There's a time-lapse videos out there. Project is 88% complete. Over 2.4 million job hours worked on the project. They got a great safety record, really strong contractor. The heavy civil works are complete. You can see the track is going in now on the main span, being installed on the approaches and the main span. Our track cutovers are planned for early 2026. Next up, going further north, is the East River Tunnel Rehabilitation Program. So this project just started a few months ago. It's a $1.6 billion project. This is an Amtrak project. Complete modernization of the two tunnel tubes that were damaged by Superstorm Sandy. That's been a while ago, but we finally got there. We got the funding we needed. We got a design that works. We got a contractor on board, and we're just making great progress up there. We took line 2 out of service on May 23rd. You can see some of the work that's already been going on. We've stripped out all the catenary system, all of the track, the ballast, and now you're into the bench wall demolition, and that's what you see in the picture on the top right is the concrete bench wall that held a bunch of conduit for the power distribution and signaling systems. And so that's all being demolished and cleared out. And then once that's done, then they'll go back into the rebuild mode. We're scheduled to reopen line 2 in early 2026, and then take another long-term outage on line 1 by the end of next year, with the whole project wrapping up in 2027. Still moving north is the Connecticut River Bridge. This is, again, an Amtrak project, $1.3 billion to replace a 117-year-old bridge with a new 2-track movable structure. This will allow us to increase our train speeds from 45 to 70 miles an hour. There's a new fishing pier we've already reopened up there. Our contractor's making great work with the temporary trestles, the access roads, new bridge structure steels in fabrication. This project is going extremely well. We've got a really solid contractor up there doing the work. I was up there a couple of months ago, really pleased with the progress on site. So I want to shift into our fleet and facilities. I want to leave time for Q&A. So these are the maintenance facilities that I mentioned. These are what we call a level 1 facility. These are really massive facilities that we need for the new fleet. for the NextGen Acela train sets as well as the Aero train sets. I'll talk more about Aero in a moment, but there's 5 of these level 1 facilities, one right here in Washington at the Ivy City Yard. That job is going very well. Pencoach Yard in Pennsylvania, I was up there about a month ago. That job is going very well also. King Street in Seattle, Boston, Southampton, and then the Sunnyside Yard in New York. You can see the construction start dates, the completion dates, and the cost associated with each one of those. Really excited about these facilities. You ever had an opportunity to visit one of our existing facilities? They are old, they're tired. This new fleet provides a great opportunity to give us what we need to do the inspection, the servicing, but also provide a better work environment for our crews. Some of these facilities we have are actually out in the weather. So these folks work out there in the winter and the summer, maintaining our fleet, and these new facilities will provide them a much better work environment. So moving on to Aero. So this used to be called the Intercity Trains Program, ICT. It's been rebranded about a year ago, I think, to the Aero program. But these are amazing trains. These are intended to replace the Northeast regional trains, is what the intent is. That's where they're going. They're going to other places as well around the network. Improved passenger amenities on board, comfortable seating, great restrooms, contemporary food service, just a great experience. I think I might have some pictures, I hope I do, of the inside of the trains. First train sets will go into service in the Cascades in the Pacific Northwest next year, and then the rollout will continue, and we'll start to see them on the Northeast Corridor and other places around the network after that. Manufactured by Siemens in Sacramento and Lexington, and you can just see the supply chain here. I think about this with all the jobs created here in the United States with the manufacture of these kinds of train sets. So production's ongoing. We got 97 coaches and 11 locomotives in production. Some are already in final assembly and testing. We got factory testing underway, dynamic testing. That actually started. The first train set has departed California and is now in Pueblo, Colorado, at our test track out in Colorado. And those trains are under testing right now in a live environment. Very, very exciting stuff here. The final train sets will go into service in 2031 to 2032. And NextGen Acela, we couldn't be more excited about NextGen launching next week. This is a fabulous train set. I've been on it a couple of times as we've been doing our commissioning runs up and down the corridor. Just fantastic amenities from the 5G enabled Wi-Fi, power outlets, reading lights, and USB ports at every seat. Those of you that have ridden our legacy trains know that the power strips are along the side. So if you're in an aisle seat, you're reaching across your fellow passenger to get to the power outlet on the side of the car. That's gone in the NextGen Acela fleet. There's one in every seat. Great food and beverage service on board. These are very fast trains. The signage and the wayfinding on board is much better than the existing train sets. These will go up to 160 miles an hour, where the track will allow us to do that. Great ride. It is a fantastic ride. It's very smooth. A noticeable difference from the legacy Acela to this particular train set. Very exciting. I hope you come ride it as soon as you can. So with that, I'll open it up to questions, Danny.
Thank you, Jim. I know we have a handful of questions, and the first one is from one of our board members, and it kind of goes to the little thing that you had about the Aero trains, the 3,500 parts, 100 suppliers across 31 states, and he kind of asked the question from an advocacy perspective of how can we do it? How can we help get that message out there, as well as asking Amtrak to make sure to get that information to organizations like Virginians for High-Speed Rail and Rail Passengers Association, because I think a lot of times our political leadership, sees projects along all these exciting projects along the Northeast, but they think the economic opportunities are confined to the Northeast when, that steel is being processed in Pennsylvania or in the Midwest, and the concrete is being made in the, in the Southeast or Southwest. And so all the things that go into those projects come from really across the entire United States. And how can we do a better job of getting that out there a little bit?
I think that's a great question. And as you and I talked right before we started this call, sometimes it's difficult to get our message out. We're so focused on the task at hand here of running a great railroad and building for the future that, we're so focused that we lack that awareness on how to get this information out so that people understand what we're doing and the impact that it has, just beyond these locations I highlighted on our project map. Danny, if you want to connect me with the gentleman, I'd be happy to share the additional information to see if that'll help an understanding of where all those places are, because we actually know the suppliers and where they're located and I believe we got it by spend, how much we're spending at those locations. So happy to share that.
Absolutely. And yeah, please send it along. I'll make sure we get it out as well. Another question, and I think the number one that we really hear in Virginia is, when all these projects are completed, what will be kind of the impact on, on-time performance or reliability, or reduced trip time? I read somewhere, I think I read it, hopefully I didn't imagine it, Jim, that, the new Baltimore tunnel going from the, 100 or the 35 miles per hour to the 100 miles per hour will reduces the trip time on the Northeast by something like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And when you start kind of adding those up is when we see a big benefit.
Well, I mean, it's part of why we're doing the infrastructure, right? Is to improve that predictability for our passengers, right? Nobody likes to be late. Our on-time performance metric that we measure for all of our lines is a really important measure for us as a company. And when we have infrastructure issues, whether it's a failure of the engine of a train and it stops somewhere, that's a bad day for us, right? And it's because it's a bad day for our customers. And all of these infrastructure improvements that we're doing are intended for two things. One is improved reliability of that infrastructure, hardening the catenary systems, upgrading the track system, straightening out the alignment in Baltimore, getting these bridges upgraded to where you can run faster speeds. And it's just not the faster speed, it's the reliability, because you really want to have the customer experience be great on our trains, to have that smoother ride and the predictable outcome in terms of being at your destination when you wanted to get there. In terms of overall trip time savings, that sounds like a really big number for the Baltimore tunnel in particular. I don't have those numbers. I'm the construction guy. The operations folks would have that. I can see if I can follow up and get that for you. But it's the whole cascade of things, right? Everyone is an incremental thing to that. And then but you can see from the timeline of some of these projects, some of them are going to take years to finish, right? We're talking 2028, 2031, 2035 for some of these projects to actually finish, till we can actually see that whole end-to-end Washington to Boston, Washington, New York time improvement. And they're going to be more incremental than they will be all of a sudden I can get to New York 30 minutes faster than I can today. It's going to be more incremental as each project finishes and comes online.
Absolutely. And the reliability is key. As a Virginian, everybody has an I-95 story. And I-95 and I-64 and 66 and 81, et cetera, are not very reliable nowadays. And so, that's what we hear from a lot of our folks is, I don't care if the train is, 10 minutes longer than driving, because driving, if it rains, all of a sudden now your trip is a half an hour longer. And so it's that reliability, making sure that our trains get where they're supposed to go when they're supposed to be there. And obviously, I know the Northeast coming south is always an issue for the reliability of some of our trains. So these projects, I think, are going to have a huge benefit. Another question is, can you give an update on the status of Penn Station in New York?
Yeah, Penn Station's an interesting one. It's wow, where do I go with that one? That the announcement surprised many of us. I'll put it that way. When we were put in charge of the transformation of Penn Station, and we had a grant to move that forward. I'm sorry, I was thinking another project, but no, that one's still fine. Sorry, I was thinking about a different project. It's going well. We have a senior vice president that is in charge of that operation up there. He reports. He's like a special advisor to the board. His name's Andy Byford. You may have heard that name, but yeah, Andy's a great guy, the right guy for the job. I'd say they're in early days right now. I know they've gone out and solicited for some external support for the formation of public-private partnerships. You got to do that right. If you've ever done a P3 and you don't do that right, it's really a bad deal for everyone. And so they did go out for professional services contracts for, I believe it's financial advisory services, and another one for P3s, the public-private partnership arrangement, because I believe that's where it will ultimately go in order to be able to bring the developers into the equation, because I don't think there's going to be any other avenue for capital funding to do it all on its own. You look at a New York Penn, or you look at a Washington Union Station, and the redevelopment costs are in the billions. And I just don't see that kind of an appetite, in Washington, D.C. at the moment, to find that kind of money to fund that kind of an operation. So it really steers you more towards a P3 model, which is our model in Philadelphia, by the way. The 30th Street Station project is a P3 effort in Philadelphia.
Excellent, thank you. And what is the extent of the long-term outage on the East River Tunnel rehab, and how are y'all kind of dealing with that outage? Fewer trains, slower trains, along that project?
That's a great question. So we did a lot of work in leading up to taking that 13-month outage. It is a 13-month outage. I got too many projects in my head, but I think we're going to wrap that up in around May or June of next year. I believe that's the schedule. And then there'll be a bit of a pause as we finish off some of the work there. And then we will take the outage on line 1 for 13 months to do that work. So what we've done to try to minimize the impact of the operations is number one, there's been service adjustments. There were some adjustments made to planned service by us and other operators in that go through those tunnels, not just Amtrak, but made service adjustments to reduce the number of trains, because you only got 3 operating tubes now, not 4, right? So also recognizing you've only got 3 instead of 4, you don't really have the redundancy if something goes wrong in one of the 3 operating tunnels. So what we've done is we've really beefed up our forces around the tunnel, outside the tunnel on the operating lines. So if something does go wrong, we can get to those issues much faster and recover service faster. And we've been very fortunate. We did a lot of hardening work in the tunnels, lines, the other 3 tunnels, before we did the long-term outage, because we wanted those to be as up to snuff as possible before we took line 2 out of service. So we did the hardening work, we took line 2 out of service, we've got additional forces on site ready to react if a problem does happen in one of the 3 running tunnels. And we've had a few of those, but our recovery has been amazing, like in minutes, to either pull trains out of there and get them out, or to do rapid repairs to keep the revenue operations and the train services running.
Excellent. And I remember, yeah, the news watching those tunnels get flooded, and glad to hear that they're advancing. And it's one of the challenges of kind of the impact of the IIJA. We're living through the kitchen remodel, and it's a little uncomfortable now. I know we're about to go through it here in Virginia with Long Bridge and some of the corridors, but you want to get to the other side, and this is the hard work and the pardon our dust and construction hat period. And but what's going to be, on the other side of that tunnel, so to speak, the use of a transportation pun is going to be much better. And so,
No, you're right, but I'll go back to one of my opening slides is the importance to us to finish these projects on time, right? We also know that if we finish a project on time, it'll finish on budget or under budget. We know that. And also, we do want to minimize the disruption to the traveling public. The sooner we can return line 2 up there on East River Tunnel to service, that's great. And we'll do the same thing when we take line 1. We want to finish these jobs as soon as we possibly can and get them back into operation so that our traveling public has this improved infrastructure available to them.
Absolutely. So another question, what took so long to get upgraded service facilities designed and under construction for the NextGen Acela train sets? And how will they be serviced in the interim?
Oh, so they're going to be serviced at our existing yards and facilities. We've made modifications to some of those to accommodate. It's a great question. People are paying attention to the dates. That's great. Yeah, you're right. We got NextGen Acelas going into operation. We have arrows going to be delivered, but those new facilities aren't going to be ready for them. But we've got a complete plan put in place where we know where we're going to stage them. We know where we're going to maintain them. They'll be maintained at the existing facilities and in existing storage tracks that we've got. So we have a complete plan put together that shows that overlap of when these new level 1 facilities come online, when all these new train sets are going to be delivered, and how that overlap works.
And when will the new bridge in Connecticut still be open for marine traffic?
I believe so. I don't think that one had an opportunity to take it over a high span. I think it still will be a movable bridge.
So I'm rolling through. How does this one's a little bit kind of off the Northeast, but how does the Seattle yard fit in to various improvements?
Yeah, I mentioned that the intercity train sets, Arrow, the first Arrow launch will be in the Cascades in that region. And so we didn't have a facility up there that was really capable of managing the maintenance needs of the Arrow train sets on the West Coast. And so Seattle was the chosen location. And so that is the primary purpose of that facility is the maintenance of the Arrow train sets serving the Pacific Northwest and along the West Coast.
Excellent. And when will the ALS 42s locomotives come online, or full implementation? Was the question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that one. Those particular locomotives are actually those are another capital project, but they're actually in our mechanical department. So they're not under the capital delivery umbrella. I came into Amtrak a little over 3 years ago, and when Laura would be able to answer this question. Unfortunately, I don't know the answer. But when capital delivery was formed in January of 2022, there's been a lot of work done in the company to figure out, okay, what pieces go where, right? Those particular trains, okay, they went to mechanical. The rest of the stations outside of the 5 iconic ones, they went somewhere else. So all those negotiations, I'll call them, and decisions on how to slice up the entire capital program within Amtrak were made before I got here. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer, but so that was the thought process, though, that landed, and we ended up with this portfolio that we do now have in capital delivery.
And a fairly large portfolio at that.
It is.
And there's a question about the Arrow train sets and kind of what happens when they need to be serviced outside the Northeast. And I can actually answer that, I think, from the Virginia perspective. I know Virginia, through our fantastic Passenger Rail Authority, is advancing the Fulton Yard here outside Richmond, not too far from my office. And they're actually doing it with pits and other infrastructure specifically to prepare for servicing the future Aero trains when they come to the Commonwealth. And hopefully that moves us up the line. So, Jim, if you can do anything, we'd love to see Aero sooner rather than later. But that way that we can have minor facilities in the Commonwealth ready to service those trains when they come online and servicing our Amtrak Virginia routes. And so the four that Jim mentioned are the major ones, especially the ones on the Northeast corridor, but there will also be minor ones, rail yards and facilities, including here in Virginia. So we're very excited about that project as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We call those the level 2 facilities. So there's the 5 level 1 facilities, and then the rest are level 2s, and they're all over the nation. We've got them in all kinds of different places. So, yeah.
And just a comment, great job with the Philadelphia station rehab and the new Acela. Somebody's very excited about that. And I know we're getting close on time. And so one of the other questions, and I guess, is does Amtrak have all the funds necessary to complete those projects kind of in the bank or in the pipeline? The Baltimore, Philly, the Portal bridges, et cetera.
Great question. The answer is yes. Those projects are fully obligated. We weren't going to go out on the street and award contracts without fully obligated funds. We understand there are other parts of the government. I used to work around the Department of Energy and the Department of Defense, and you would go out and there would always be this disclaimer in the contract subject to federal funding. And as a contractor, it just drove me nuts. I hated to bid that stuff because that just meant they could pull the project at any given moment if the funding got pulled. And that is just not the case with this portfolio of projects. We are fully obligated on the ones, everything that we've got in those green dots and under construction, all of those funds are obligated.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jim. And I will be the advocacy hat, put my advocacy hat on for everybody with us and just say that the current IIJA expires at the end of this current fiscal year. Our congressional delegation and members of Congress and the administration are working on the next surface transportation bill. So it's a great opportunity to reach out to your elected officials, let them know the importance of the federal rail programs and the funding that was included in IIJA, both for Amtrak and for the grants for states like Virginia. And so please encourage them to continue those type of investments into the future. So that all these projects that are currently underway are not the last ones, but just the beginning of a true rail renaissance across America and the Northeast and Virginia. So please talk to your elected officials and let them know how important that funding is for our communities.
Danny, I couldn't have said it better myself. It's this initial IIJA, it's like the down payment. It sounds like a tremendous amount of money, and it is, but I mean, we have a pipeline of capital projects that are still out there that are currently not obligated, not funded, and what we did is we got the IIJA and we prioritized those most critical assets that we needed to attack first, and that's what we did with that funding. But yeah, there's certainly more to do. We want to continue to improve passenger rail for the U.S. For the country here, and that is our charter from Congress, right? As the nation's passenger railways company is to do that. So anyway, we're excited and hope that we will continue to see more legislation and more funding come through for passenger rail, not just for Amtrak, but for all operators. All operators have the same challenges of infrastructure and trying to invest in that. It's very, very difficult to do all of it on the back of passenger revenue. It's very difficult. You have a lot of operating costs, and so when how do you fund the infrastructure? This is the way for sure.
And no transportation mode makes money. Potholes don't fill themselves, and so we have to invest in our infrastructure. It's what keeps our economy going.
That's right.
Jim, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon and giving us an update on all the exciting things happening on the Northeast Corridor. And thank you all for our audience for joining us this afternoon. And I hope everybody has a great day. And thank you again.
Thanks for having me, Danny. Thank you.
Thank you.